Hey guys, Ruckus Gaming coming at you here today with a common relic tier list. I wanted to do it this way for a couple reasons. I feel like, number one, including all of the relics together at the same time gives you really weird results. I think common relics should be judged against other common relics and not rare relics or boss relics or shop relics. I think I want to do separate videos for all of those different topics. The common relic pool, I think, is actually pretty strong, and I think some of that gets lost when it's compared to other relics. Secondly, I think some of those videos get just really long, and it's hard to actually focus and listen and pay attention to what's being said, and you just kind of turn it on in the background and then don't actually listen. So hopefully keeping it shorter will make it a little bit easier to digest. Keep in mind, I've only got about 500 hours in game so far, and only A20 with one character ironclad. I'm A16 or 17 with all of the others, so I'm pretty close. There are obviously lots of players who have done this before me and have a lot more experience, but this is just my own 2 cents. If you agree or disagree, feel free to let me know why. But without further ado, let's jump into the relic tier list. Okay. So Akabeko is first up on the list, and I'm going to say that Akabeko is a strong B tier relic. I think it is great for providing extra damage on multi-attack hits. It gives you the plus 8 damage to the first attack of any combat. And 8 damage is not bad, but unless you're consistently drawing a whirlwind or a skewer or something of that nature, a Ragnarok, it's just 8 damage. It's not that much. It is situational, and it can be very good when you pair it with the correct attacks, but it's not going to be something that's always useful for every deck. Next up, we have Anchor, and I'm going to put Anchor as a solid A tier relic. I like to think of Anchor as basically saving you 2 energy on first turn that you don't need to block. If you think of, your generic block card on any character is going to give you 5 block. As the Anchor provides 10 block on first turn, that's essentially like, hey, I have 2 free energy of block just given to me that I can now spend on attacks. And a strong first turn is always very important in Slay the Spire. I think all combats have a first turn. So having a strong first turn, setting up, getting yourself into a good position for the rest of the combat is extremely important. And as such, any relic that helps you improve your first turn has a very high value in my mind. All right, next we have the Ancient Tea set, which I am going to place in the C tier. This gives you 2 extra energy on the first turn of the next combat after you rest at a campsite. And you can start to see why it's already so low as it is. It is a one-time bonus per combat that you only get in the event that you go through a campfire and rest at that campfire, where you will probably want to be upgrading or possibly grabbing a key. And it's just, it's nothing great. You're not gonna decide to go for extra campfires and extra resting just to get the 2 energy here. It is a slight bonus to something you may already want to do, which is nice. It is a first turn bonus, which is nice, but I think all of the conditions that kind of have to come together for this make it just not that great. Art of War is up next, and we are also placing this in the B tier. I think this might be my first kind of hot take here. I just think that there are not very many deck types that don't play attacks very often. There might be some defect builds or some silent builds that get away with a lot of skills and powers. But you're never really going to be running skill-heavy decks on Ironclad or the Watcher. And while the bonus is nice and it gives you something to play with, you know, you can choose not to play an attack and store some energy for next turn, which is incredibly useful and something that's fun to play with. It provides inconsistent value, and it provides a lot less value for some decks than others, which is why I'm putting it here. It's not a universally useful thing. I think when I'm thinking S tier, I'm looking for something that you can put into any deck and it will always be good, no matter what. Next up, we're going to have Bag of Marbles. This is going to be another B tier relic. I like that it is a first turn bonus. Adding extra damage on turn 1 is always very nice to have. It removes artifacts from other creatures that you may encounter, which is also very valuable. It can be very annoying to deal with if your deck revolves around placing a weekend to provide some hidden block or something like that. Unfortunately, it is just a 1-turn bonus, and I don't think all kinds of decks are always going to be able to take advantage of it. Just in the same way that we said Art of War is probably better for some decks than others, I think obviously Bag of Marbles is the same in the opposite direction. I think it is great for Ironclad or some Silent Shiv decks, perhaps, but the defect is not really going to put out a lot of physical attack heavy decks. Not all silence require lots of physical attacks. It's amazing on the Watcher, though. If you're on the Watcher, it's S tier. Definitely go for Bag of Marbles if you're playing the Watcher. All right, next up is Bag of Preparation. This is our first S tier relic. As I've said, I think it is incredibly important to make your first turn better, and this is something that will just make any deck of any character better. More cards on your first turn is just very, very good. All right, next we have Blood Vial. I'm going to place that before Ancient Tea Set on the C tier list. I think that it is a nice source of reliable sustain, but I also don't think that it's anything that's really going to affect your gameplay decisions. It is just a very passive bonus. It obviously benefits all characters, though I think maybe characters that take more damage, like Ironclad, probably benefit from it more. But I think even characters with small health pools tend to benefit more from small sources of healing because it's a larger proportion of their overall health pool. So I think it does provide decent bonus to all characters, but it's just not something I really play around. It's just something that's there, and it provides the value that it does, which is small and reliable, but not amazing. So very average, kind of meh relic to me. Next up is Bronze Scales, and we're going to throw that at the top of the C tier. It is situationally great for things like birds, which are super annoying. It can provide great value against the heart or any other large multi-attacking enemy in the game, of which there are several. But at the same time, it is not something that I plan a run around. I am not really changing my deck composition or my pathing choices simply based on having bronze scales. It's just something that's there, and every once in a while is really, really nice to have, but most of the time it is not something that I strongly consider among the entire pool of relics that I have. I am much more concerned with relics that I can choose to play around either by making different pathing choices or by making different plays with the cards in hand, with card order, or just what is played and what is not. And bronze scales doesn't really change any of that. Next up we have the Ironclad starting relic. I will just include all starting relics with the commons, as well as the common character exclusive relics, but starting here with Burning Blood. That's going to go right after Akabeko. I'm a big Ironclad fan, and I really love the value that this provides, especially early in runs when you're starting with less HP at high ascensions, when you are trading HP for Niao options like gold or rare cards. It's just a great source of consistent sustain. It's kind of like one free block per combat. You know, you can not play that basic defend and you can take the damage and you can get it back. So it provides a little bit of flexibility. It allows you to be a little bit more aggressive in your pathing. It allows you to take more attacks early on and not worry about block. Use your HP as a block card, as they say. But it isn't something that will win a run for you. It does add a lot of value over the course of a run, but it's not going to save a run either. I think there are a lot more effective and effectual starting relics on other characters. All right, next is Centennial Puzzle. This is going to be our first D tier relic. I think that it's just not that useful. Extra draw is a good thing, but this is usually coming after you have already hit end turn and you've just had a bad turn because you've just taken damage and you haven't blocked everything. Now, if you're only taking 1 damage, that might be great, but chances are you're probably taking more than 1 damage. So this doesn't help you prevent a bad turn. It may help you recover from that bad turn and have a better second turn or next turn, but it just never feels good to actually be using this, and it's a one use. It's not something like the Runic Cube, which you can really play around, and only Ironclad is able to actually use this positively and proactively. I don't think there's any real reliable way for other characters to damage themselves. So it just doesn't provide very much value to anyone except Ironclad a little bit. It's just not a great relic. Not happy to see this one pop up on the list. All right, next up is Ceramic Fish, F tier relic. It sounds good on the surface. You want to be adding cards to your deck anyway, and getting a reward for something you want to do anyway is always good. However, it also encourages flooding your deck by adding too many cards and not actually giving you enough gold per card. For example, just to get a common card at the shop, the cheapest you can get is 45 gold or something like that. So that's 6 cards. If you want a rare card, that's about 135 gold. That's 15 cards. And if you want a rare relic, that's 285 gold or so for the cheapest rare relic. That's at least 20. No, almost 35 cards. So you're not going to be able actually to spend a lot of the gold that it gives you without making your deck just big and bad. It's something that might be good if you get very early in the run, but how many times do you see this in the second half of Act 3, and you're just like, wow, my deck is finished, and I'm not going to add any more cards, so this does literally nothing. That's why Ceramic Fish is bad. Next up is Cracked Core, and I think this is an A-tier starter relic for the defect. Starting off with that lightning is a great passive source of damage with the channeling that it does at the end of your turn, but also evoking it with dual cast, providing 18 energy or 16 energy, not energy, damage, will help keep those initial hallway fights really short, save you HP, get your card rewards quicker and easier, and make your deck better, faster. So I'm a huge fan of Cracked Core. I don't like to boss swap out of it very often because not having that initial lightning orb, even at the trade of an extra energy per turn, does feel bad. You don't want to lose that extra lightning orb when you're used to it. So I think this is a very, very valuable starter relic. Next up we have Damaru, and here's another F-tier relic. So it's just too slow. One mantra per turn is not going to help you out, especially if you're not already doing a mantra deck. And even if you are already doing a mantra deck, it really just doesn't add enough to make a difference. So it's really just not that useful ever, even when you're running the perfect kind of deck for it. If you've got a couple of prostrates, if you've got a pray or a devotion, like plus one more is just not going to matter. So it's too slow, doesn't provide enough value, only useful for one character because it's exclusive to the Watcher, and just doesn't even do what it's supposed to do well. F-tier relic. Next up, we have the Data Disc. Another A-tier relic for the defect. I think starting off with +1 focus is super strong. There are not many enemies in the game that can debuff your focus in the same way that they can with weakened or frail to debuff your strength and dexterity. So there are just not many counters in the game to it. I know you can encounter enemies in Act 4 that will debuff your focus. You can debuff your focus yourself with a bias cog, but really, considering how many other enemies in the game will weaken you or frail you, then comparatively it provides a lot more value because it's just never going to be countered by most enemy types. It's essentially like starting off with a free power card in a defrag that is a 0 energy cost every single turn starting combat turn 1. So it's a great passive bonus. Even though it's only for the defect and does not benefit other characters, I think for the relics that add a flat +1 bonus to scaling, this is easily the best. Next up is Dream Catcher, and that is going to be a D tier relic for me. I think that it makes resting better, providing that extra card reward, but you don't really want to be resting most of the time anyway. You want to be making upgrades. So instead of making something good better, it just makes something bad less worse. And I think when you're playing a roguelike, leaning into your strengths and making your strengths better and raising your ceiling is better than trying to raise your floor and improve your weaknesses. I think you have to kind of roll with what is going well. And if you're resting a lot, things are probably not going well. The one time that I do think this is really useful is when you are perhaps looking for a specific card. Maybe you're going for an infinite, or you really need that catalyst to make that poison deck pop. This does give you an option to go searching for cards. But as I said, if you're in that kind of situation, that's not really where you want to be. It's just not a strong position. And I think that it's just making something bad worse instead of making a good thing better. And in that way, it's just not very valuable. Next up, we have Happy Flower. This is going to be an A tier relic. I think that getting a repeating reward for something that you're going to be doing all of the time anyway, you don't need to change anything about your deck or your play style, is fantastic. It benefits all characters. More energy is always good. And it can provide a deeper level of play if you do choose to really stall fights and set up the end of each combat that will give you a free energy on turn 1 next time. So it is something that someone with quote unquote low skill can just use without worrying about. You know, it's always going to be there. You're always going to be taking turns. It's always going to be rewarding you no matter what you do. But it also has a much higher ceiling level of play and strategy to it that more experienced players really enjoy. And I think that is something to consider with relics as well, is giving different amounts of rewards to different skill of play. And I think that's a really cool part of how this game is designed, is so many relics are things that you can kind of let just be there and give you passive rewards and not worry about. Or you can really focus on them and say, okay, I could kill this enemy now, but if I wait 2 turns, it'll be even better for me in my next combat. I just need to figure out how to stall those 2 turns. So for those reasons, Happy Flower gets an A+ from me. Next up for our common relics is Juzu Bracelet. And I gotta say, this is a D tier relic in my opinion. Not getting combats in question marks is nice. It provides you safety. But in the same way, there are also a lot of events you don't really want to see. You know, you might get curses, you might lose HP to the gremlin, you might have forced card loss in events. So even just saying like no combats, only events and rewards or shops, it's still not as great as it sounds. It'll let you limp through acts safely, but much in the same as Dreamcatcher. Like if you're limping through an act, resting a lot, avoiding combats, avoiding hallways, you're not going to see good card rewards. You're not going to get potions. You're just relying on the RNG of getting good events, which is not a high percentage play, I gotta say. So for those reasons, Juzu Bracelet, D tier relic. Next up is Lantern, and we're gonna put it right here in between Burning Blood and Bag of Marbles. Very solid B tier relic. 1 time per combat, 1 energy. Nothing wrong with it. It does let you take a little bit more expensive cards. But again, it's a 1-time first turn bonus. I don't think it's going to change a lot about how I'm playing my deck or managing my pathing, but it is a fairly nice little, there you go, 1 free energy. Can't be too mad about it. Next up, we have Maw Bank. This is going to be a C tier relic. I think that it's better because it is per floor. You're always generating gold every time you move up, as opposed to Ceramic Fish requiring you to take cards. It's more gold. It's 12 gold per floor. So it can provide some fairly good value, especially if it is taken in an act where you may not have the ability to go to a shop. You know, you want to hit the elites, you want to hit the campfires, You can't always get a shop in. Having a full act of floors with Maw Bank does give you some money to spend. But I don't think it's going to change your pathing very much. And once you get to that first shop and spend it, it's done. So, just a good average relic, I think. You know, it can give you cards, it can give you relics, it can give you potions. It's useful for everybody. But it's a short-term relic to use. And it can provide you long-term benefit based on how you spend that gold. But it's not something that you're going to be thinking about your entire run. Once you've spent it, it's gone. And those kind of relics have a little less value to me than a relic that will continue to work from floor 1 to floor 55. Next up, we have Meal Ticket. This is going to be the top of my B tier. I think shops are something that we always want to be going to anyway. We want card removes. We want to see more cards. We want to see more relics, more potions. You don't have to spend any money to get the HP heal out of it. You just get that free 15 for going to a shop, even if you don't have money. So you can think of it as a free fire that will not only allow you to heal and improve your deck, but provides some future pathing flexibility. And, you know, maybe the next campfire you don't need to heal, so you can upgrade and improve your deck even more. So you kind of get a double reward in a sense. And I think that is incredibly valuable. It works for every character all the time. And as I'm talking, I maybe want to raise it up, but let's just keep it at B for now. And then we'll go back at the end and see if there's any tweaking we need to do. But let's leave it there for now. I do like the shape. I think a lot of these tier lists have weird shapes because everyone just throws everything in A tier. I try to want to avoid that. I do like that shape. Next up is Nunchaku. S tier relic. I think that getting free energy for things you're going to do anyway, much in the same way as Happy Flower, is fantastic. Playing attacks is something all characters are going to be doing. Some maybe a little less than others. Maybe defect a little less, maybe silent a little less, depending on what kind of deck they're going for. But super, super strong on Ironclad and Watcher. Can be very strong on the silent and the defect, depending on the deck type. But even if they're not attack-heavy decks, you're still going to get 10 attacks in pretty regularly. And free energy is just always great. So, top of the S tier for me. Nunchaku is great. Happy to see it every time. Next, we have Oddly Smooth Stone. And I'm going to throw that at the bottom of B tier. And I think this is the weakest common relic that provides the +1 to your scaling, just because of the amount of decks that don't want to spend a lot of cards blocking. Ironclad doesn't want to do a lot of blocking. Defect is going to be using a lot of the blocking from his orbs, which are not affected by dexterity. Watcher is not going to do a lot of blocking. So it's great on the silent and great situationally on other characters. But of the 3 scaling common relics, this is the lowest in my opinion, just because the different variety of decks that it will provide a significant value to is a little bit lower than the others. Next up is the Omamori, which I'm going to put right at the very top of C tier. I think this is one of those relics that is situationally fantastic. It can save you in situations where you get forced curses from events. It can allow you to do something like take the double normality event for 999 gold. But for the most part, I think there are a lot of runs where I get Omamori and it does nothing. I'm not in the habit of taking curses very much, so I'm used to playing without the benefits. And I don't feel like I need to trade for those benefits to have a good run. I can avoid curses on my own. So this is really just insurance, or a very situational positive, though it can be a great positive. And if you do get it early, it is much better, obviously, than getting it late. You have much more chance to get a curse you don't want. It'll save you money and let you remove more strikes. There are a lot of times where you get the gold for curse event, and you don't want to waste the gold you're getting on removing the curse you're getting, because then it's only, 100 gold. And the most important thing might be getting a strikeout. Well, your 100 gold is nice, but if you don't get the strikeout, then your deck is still not that great. So for those reasons, it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes great, sometimes does nothing. That's the definition of C tier for me. All right, next up we have Orichalcum. This is going straight to the top of S tier. Just like we said, Anchor is basically 2 free energy of block on turn 1. Orichalcum is essentially the same thing, but every single turn it gives you 1 energy of block. And if you're playing Defect, it's even better, because this will be applied before any block from Frost Orbs. So incredibly powerful on Defect. It is great on the Watcher for allowing you to get by with less defense, less energy spent blocking, more time spent attacking, ending fights quickly. It's great for Ironclad because of the amount of attacks that he wants to do. Does not want to spend energy blocking. Even on Silent, I think it's really solid. A lot of times you have those instances where you've got an enemy, you've got 1 energy left, you've got a defend and a strike early on in Act 1, and you're trying to think, should I block or should I attack? And this just makes that situation not a problem anymore. You just attack, and you take the 6 block from Orichalcum, which is better than you would get from the defend anyway. So I think it's great value in early runs, because it allows you to get out of those combats faster by playing more attacks, not worrying about block. So incredibly useful and powerful common relic that I'm happy to see anytime. Next up we have Pen Nib, and Pen Nib is also going straight to the top. Back to back Orichalcum and Pen Nib. Pen Nib is just a lot of fun to play with. As I've said before, it gives you a passive bonus that you can just let happen, or if you really pay attention to it and play around with it, this can be a run-winning relic. Doubling something like a Bludgeon, or doubling an Immolate, or doubling, an X-cost Skewer, or whatever. It is just so super powerful. You can build a deck around it, and it always provides value. Incredibly powerful relic. Always love to see it. All right, next up is Potion Belt. That's going to go in the A tier. I am a strong believer in potions. I think they are great emergency buttons to get you out of fights. And you can also use potions very proactively and plan ahead and hold potions for future fights to make them easier. And in that way, more potion slots are fantastic. One of the biggest bummers of High Ascension is only having 2 potion slots instead of 3. So getting 4 potion slots, you feel incredibly powerful and incredibly rich. You can bank them for emergencies. You can keep them for your hardest fights if you get a good potion ahead of time. So I always am pretty happy to have a potion belt, even if it doesn't provide the immediate benefit that some other relics might give with strength or block or whatever. Next up is Preserved Insect. Another S tier relic. I think the bonus that it gives is great. 25% off of the elite health is huge. It will make a lot of combats much quicker to get out of. It will provide even greater value over the run as HP increases on elites and they get harder and harder. The benefit that it gives you is bigger and bigger. It allows you to take more elites, get more relics, and can really help you snowball into a incredibly powerful run. Elites provide some of the greatest value per node. They increase your rare chance. They increase your potion chance. You have a relic that comes from them. So anything that helps you get more elites in your run will give you the highest amount of reward per floor. Very great relic. Next up is Pure Water. I'm going to put that right at the top of B tier. I think that it is a good relic. I think that free energy is always useful. Obviously, it's only useful for the Watcher and not others. It can create more flexible play and allow you to get that one more attack in to finish a hallway fight instead of taking damage, which is nice. It can combo well with crushed joints, which I am a huge fan of. But also the energy that it provides is one time per combat, and the Watcher is probably the character that worries about energy the least. It provides a little kickstart early on in runs to kind of get you going, but once you've got your deck set up, it's just a little bonus, and it's about the same as a lantern, a little bit better because you can hold it until a later turn, but I don't think it's a game-changing relic by any means. Next up is the Ironclad exclusive Red Skull. I'm putting that at the top of A tier. I think as Ironclad, you're probably going to spend a lot of time below half health, and getting a boost of strength when you need it is great for ending those fights quickly. You can choose to play around this. You can choose to take some damage and drop you down so you get that strength bonus, especially knowing that you've got like a Burning Blood that's going to be healing you up. If you're really lucky, maybe you have a meat on the bone, something like that. So you can kind of yo-yo your health up and down if you're careful with what you're doing. It provides the ability to take cards like Limit Break, you know, if you don't have other sources of strength, which you probably should, but sometimes you think, I don't have anything to use Limit Break on yet. This can be a time where if you're riding low on HP, Limit Break will always be useful. So that will give you even more strength. And it just leans into the whole Ironclad fantasy of blocking with HP and going berserk. It feels really fun to just turn it on and go up a second notch when you go below half HP. Makes you feel kind of like a boss, you know, like the Awakened one having their second phase of the battle, or Time Eater, or the Champ buffing at half HP. It just feels fun. I think it's a great relic. Next up is Regal Pillow. This is going to be the top of D tier for me. I think resting is something you don't really want to be doing, and making something bad less bad is not what you really want to be doing in Slay the Spire. You want to make your good things better. You want to raise that ceiling. You don't want to raise the floor. But if you're really, really struggling, Regal Pillow can be nice. It can allow you to take less campfires per path and then be more aggressive with elites. But I don't think that's how people really use it. I think they just don't really use it that much. It's just a weird little nice bonus that you get for something that you probably don't want to do anyway. So for that reason, not very useful. Not in my opinion. Next is our Silent Starter Relic, the Ring of the Snake. This is essentially the exact same thing as Bag of Prep. Drawing more on turn 1 and having a stronger turn 1, especially for the Silent who likes to draw and discard. You love the Ring of the Snake. Great relic. Next up, Smiling Mask. We're going to take that all the way up to S tier. All decks want to remove cards, whether it's a strike remove or a defend remove on the Watcher, or curse removes, or whatever it is, a bad Pandora's box transform, anything like that. All decks want remove. And how many times have you gone to a shop and then realized, crap, I don't actually have enough gold for this remove because I've already had 3 removes and now it's like 175 and I have 30 gold. So provides great value from the beginning of the run to the end of the run. All characters, all classes, all decks. It's just a great relic. You love to see it. Next up we have Snecko Skull. Snecko Skull is the absolute bottom of the D tier. It is only used by the Silent, and it is the definition of what I would say is a win more relic. If your deck does not have any poison in it, this does literally nothing for you. If your deck has a little poison in it, this still does basically nothing. For instance, if you've got a deadly poison, that's essentially 15 energy over 5 turns, 3 damage per turn. If you add a Snecko Skull to that, that's 6 poison. Then you take that out 6 turns, it's 21 damage, 3.5 damage per turn. It's just not great value. Even with something like a Bouncing Flask, it goes from 9 damage over 9 turns up to 16 damage, which sounds great, but at that point, it's overkill, and you're probably already going to end the combat before all of that poison really ticks off. So if you've got a lot of poison, it doesn't matter because you're already winning. If you've got a little poison, it doesn't make you any better really. And if you don't have any poison, it does nothing. It's just a win more relic. It's kind of fun if you're already doing a strong poison deck, but it doesn't actually make a difference. Either you're already winning or you're not weak enough or not strong enough, and it won't make a difference either way. Next up is the Strawberry. Top of the F tier. I think max HP is okay. It's not something that you generally consider very often during a run. It can be nice to offset if you've lost max HP through other events somehow, but really it's just like one of those relics you see like, okay, it's not nothing. And that's about all you can say about it. It's not going to affect your gameplay. It's not going to affect how you path or the cards you take. It's just there. And that's it. Next up, we have the Boot. F tier. There's just so few instances where this is even useful. It's good against the Nemesis for Intangible. Can be good against birds because they half the damage on strikes. But outside of that, there's just no reason it's going to ever provide anything of real value. It's just the Boot. Tiny Chest is our next relic and is going right in the middle of C tier. I think that it is something that does not affect my pathing very often unless I suddenly realize that I'm at a node where I can choose between 2 paths, and it also happens to be my Tiny Chest 4th room. I don't think I'm going to go event hunting or treasure hunting by going through lots of unknown rooms just to trigger tiny chests. Avoiding combats, avoiding elites is usually not a great idea because you're not getting the rewards quickly enough. Events are very unpredictable and unreliable. They can be great, but if you're not getting consistent card rewards, if you're not getting potions, if you're not getting gold for shops, you're really hurting yourself in the long run. And so tiny chests is one of those things that is a good bonus that comes in passively but should not really affect how you play the game. It's just as you play normally and you get to your fourth event or unmarked room, then you get that treasure, which is nice, but not game-changing. Next up is Toy Ornithopter. This is the absolute top of A tier. I've already said how much I love potions, and I think getting extra value out of potions in the form of healing is great. You can really save those potions to provide an extra boost when you need it, keep yourself topped off, or use it in an emergency and provide that little bit of HP that will keep you alive for one turn longer and give you just one more chance to end the combat. So I'm always happy to see Toy Ornithopter. Easy pickup anytime you come across it. Next, we have the strength scaling common relic, Vajra. I'm going to put this up right in between Data Disc and Anchor. It's a great passive scaling bonus. You don't need to play around it, but it can encourage you to go a little bit more physical if you get this early in a run. Go for that Silent Shiv deck. Go for that Defect Claw deck, maybe. Or just provide a little bit of quick scaling to the Ironclad, the Watcher, or any kind of deck. I think benefits from the strength a little bit more than most decks may benefit from something like Oddly Smooth Stone. I think in general decks tend to want to attack rather than play block skills. I don't have like math to back that up, but I think that's just general strategy for most decks. You still need to do some attacking. So next up we have the two final relics in the common pool, the 2 random upgrade relics, starting with Warpaint, the 2 random skill upgrades. That is going here in C tier. I think you often get this, and because of the random nature of the upgrades, it can be very useful, and it can be just kind of a, oh well, that's nice, I guess. You know, if you get this early in a run, you are more likely to be just upgrading basic defense. If you get this later in a run, you're going to have more skills in hand, but then that makes it less likely that you're going to get a really good upgrade. You probably should have made your best upgrades already. So it's just kind of a, yeah, nice, maybe a little bit. Not going to change anything drastically about your deck, but it's an upgrade. And finally, our last common relic is the Whetstone, 2 random attack upgrades. I'm going to put that at the bottom of C tier. I know I have said a couple different times about, attacks are better than blocks, but I think that skills are better than attacks more generally. Whether it's an offering on the Ironclad, or whether it's vigilance, or like water, or something like that on the Watcher. Like, there are very important skills that are not defense on all characters that they all would like to see upgraded more than attacks. Obviously, there are some decks that don't use attacks very much, if at all. So attacks are a little less valuable across the board, whereas a skill even if it's not a defend, a skill can be very valuable, and it can be something that your deck relies on. You know, it might be a defect seek to really get that combo to really pop off with Core Surge and Bias Cog, or, you know, whatever. Having upgraded skills is very important for almost every deck, even Ironclad. So in that way, I would say that War Paint is a little more valuable than Whetstone. Alright guys, thanks for watching to the end of the video. I hope that this was informational. My goal was to set up a fairly even distribution. I didn't want to have a lot of, you know, S and A tier relics and then nothing low tier. Obviously, there are situations where all of these relics can be good, but in general, my main decision-making process was, is this something that is widely beneficial to all characters and all deck types? Is this something that is a recurring reward, or is it a one-time? Is it something that improves your first turn or a later turn? Is it something that can provide deeper level of play, you know, setting up Pen Nib or Nunchaku or Happy Flower? Is it something that can let you path a little bit more differently? Or is it just something that you get as you play normally and you don't really have to worry about it? Does it make the deck stronger, or does it make your deck weaker? You know, arguably flooding your deck with commons that you're just taking for Ceramic Fish Gold. No one should be doing that, and I don't think anyone does. But I think Ceramic Fish actively makes your deck bad. So thanks for watching. I am going to be putting out more of these kind of informational posts, maybe some beginner tips, some how-to achievement guides. Hopefully do a little bit shorter form. I know some of the hour or 2 hour long videos are hard to get through, but thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon. This is Ruckus Gaming. Please drop a like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. See you next time.